Dr. E.N.G. Marek Gruszecki. Philosophy of Being. Krakow, 2025. My 85th anniversary. Philosophical essay Does God Exist? Krakow, the 19th of April 2025.
The Church Apologizes, Part 1. One of the greatest events of the Jubilee Year was a day of forgiveness, when, during a solemn Mass in the Vatican Basilica, the Pope apologized for the wrongs that followers of other religions had suffered from Christians. The Polish Pope, on behalf of the whole Church, apologized to God for the faults of all believers. The steps taken by John Paul II were seen as signs of the vitality of the Church. All members of the Church, including those in office within it, must acknowledge themselves as sinners. This was an extremely important act of the Church on the threshold of the new millennium. As part of the universal prayer, confessions of guilt in various areas were recited. Each invocation ended with the Holy Father asking for God's mercy. We ask forgiveness of the divisions that have occurred among Christians, for the violence that some have used in the service of truth, and for the attitudes of distrust and hostility sometimes adopted towards followers of other religions. The Pope, on behalf of the whole Catholic Church and also of all Christians, apologized for these acts. By confessing our faults, we at the same time forgive others for the faults committed against us. Throughout history, countless Christians have endured harassment, violence, and persecution because of their faith. Just as the victims of these injustices are forgiven, so too do we forgive. Today and in every era, the Church seeks to purify the memory of these sad events from all feelings of anger and desire for revenge. Already Paul VI has solemnly stated that the Church is holy, even though she includes sinners in her bosom. Holiness and sin in the Church, therefore, have their effects on the whole Church. The Jubilee in the Church has always been lived as an occasion for repentance for the sins of God's people. In the Church's past, one does not encounter any previous request for forgiveness concerning past guilt. Reflection on the inquisitorial activities of the Catholic Church was seriously undertaken in the run-up to the Jubilee of 2000. John Paul II called the Church to an examination of conscience. In fact, he was the first pope to have the courage to call the Church to account for the Church's past on such key topics as the Inquisition, religious violence, and antisemitism. No one before him had done that. Archbishoprics, we have some big work to do. To show back the Pope as someone who led the Church, led it in a very beautiful and courageous way, confronting it also with its own evil. Has the Church apologized for the Inquisition? Yes, the Catholic Church has apologized for the actions of the Inquisition in the past. This type of crime against humanity will always be a difficult subject. Church Apologies, Part 2. After all, they conflict with the message of love, peace, and righteousness preached by Jesus. The Pope asked all those who had been wronged by Catholics to forgive them. He also recalled earlier dark pages in the history of the Catholic Church, the Crusades, the Inquisition, the schism in the 11th century, the bloody wars of the Reformation, and, finally, the attitude of some of the clergy during the Second World War. We apologize for the historical sins committed by Catholics, said the Pope in St. Peter's Square at the Vatican on the 60th anniversary of the outbreak of the Second World War. John Paul II pointed in particular to the insensitivity of many Catholics to antisemitism, but also to cases of bloodshed against Muslims or hostile attitude towards other Christian churches. He pointed out that the Church does not reject its history, which is already 2,000 years old. It only wants to draw from it what is good and avoid mistakes for the future. However, when a conference on the Inquisition was organized on the occasion of the Great Jubilee in 2000, there was a widespread expectation of an apology. However, the word apology did not come after the conference. John Paul II said that an issue as sensitive as the Inquisition had to be approached from the point of view of the time. The Church leaves the question of evaluating the past, especially ecclesiastical institutions cooperating with the state to guard ecclesiastical orthodoxy or conversion, to historical research. She facilitates it through a number of initiatives, cleaning up and making available the archives and initiating research. In a letter addressed to the authors of an 800-page study on the history of the Inquisition, Pope John Paul II stressed the importance of research enabling the Church to express repentance for her errors. The study is the fruit of a symposium on the history of the Inquisition. The symposium was organized at the Vatican in 1998 in view of the Great Jubilee. To date, the Catholic Church has not condemned the Inquisition, although in a letter to participants at the 1998 Conference on the Inquisition, Pope John Paul II affirmed his repentance for the errors committed by those who, in serving the truth, resorted to non-evangelical methods, adding that the Church is not afraid to reveal and evaluate her own past and is ready to apologize for the errors of her daughters and sons. Although the cases of abuse by churchmen were not many, they cannot be hidden or forgotten. Also, the recognition of some inquisitors as blessed and saints is seen by critics as an ambiguous position. The fundamental errors of the passing millennium are the schism between the Eastern and Western churches.
Conclusion. But Jesus, overhearing what was being said, said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Do not be afraid, only believe." Bible, Mark 5 verse 36. It will still be beautiful, despite everything. Just put on comfortable shoes, because you have your whole life to go through. John Paul II. Mathematics in Nature.